So, good afternoon, all of you. Now we are second session, which is going to become a technical session related to all the things of our RTP. And I have in panel three speakers. The one is Professor Rydell, and he is from University of Lund, Sweden, and have a great research experience of more than 35 years with a 36 RG citations are 3,840 citations in his credit, and he had published more than 150 research papers and working on bat biology and ecology since his 35 years of long experience. And he is working currently in many countries of Africa, then in India also, and many countries of the Europe. And he is having a passion of taking photos in their natural environment. Means he don't want to take photograph in captivity or in the handheld bats. So he has specialized himself in taking bats in the flying shots. So I also joined him for various excursions in northern India, and I found it's very challenging task to do such activity. So Jens is one of the person who is having original conditions, and today Professor Jens is going to share with us a little bit about the bats and human interaction with the bats, as well as various religious aspects of bats in different religions in the entire world. So over to you, Jens. Let's assign you this role of presenter. Okay. So here you go, Jens.
Okay. Should I start speaking?
Yes, please.
Should I start?
Yeah. You can
Okay.
start.
To check to see if people know what the virus is. A piece of DNA or RNA with a protecting cover that can invade another cells of mammals or other animals and use these cells to make more viruses. There is no viruses don't eat, they don't breed, or they don't. There's no that they are very difficult to kill. You cannot interfere with their activities in any way. The only way is to use your immune system to defeat and to destroy them. Or you can heat them up and cook them, then they will die also, will be destroyed. Otherwise, you have to rely on your immune system, and which you can boost with a vaccine. Okay, next picture. Can you switch?
Yes.
Yeah. I was in some from United Nations that just to put the whole thing in perspective. The people here in Europe, they are crazy about the coronavirus. They are so afraid that they have them. And yet you can see that a normal influenza kills as many people as the coronavirus have done. You watch it globally. And you can see that, I mean, people, they are not afraid of drinking and smoking or driving, you know? But the real killer, the worst killer we have here is the smoking. But people smoke like mad. This is a little bit strange. But there are people so enormously, so fantastic afraid about the bats or viruses, coronavirus, and the bats. How can that be? Can you hear what I'm saying? Does it work?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I just wanted to put this in perspective. You know, 7 million people globally, they smoke themselves to death, and coronavirus is, yes, it's a fraction, a small fraction. But okay, let's go on. Move the new picture.
Yeah.
There is one disease in the world which is known to have been transmitted to humans by bats. It is only one, and this is rabies. And you see the death rate of rabies. I checked something on the internet yesterday. I can see that US, Canada, 60, but that's over 50 years. And I read that India has about 100 cases per year, but nearly all of those are from dogs. Very few are from bats, if any. And in Sweden, we have never had a single case of rabies, neither from dogs nor bats. And yet, people are afraid of rabies. The first thing you hear people say when you show them a bat or when they find a bat, the first question is, do they have rabies? Will they kill me with rabies? You know, what is the reason? Why do they ask this? It is not a problem at all. And yet, there is also a good vaccine. So if you happen to be bitten, if you are a scientist and happen to be bitten, you take a virus. You get vaccine and you are fine. You know, this is nothing to be worried about. But people are very worried because it's about bats. Okay, take the next. There was a brilliant paper that came out a week ago, or a little more than a week ago. People think that viruses, they come mostly from bats, and that viruses from bats are much more dangerous than other viruses. So, but this was a paper that they made some statistics on this. I mean, most of our relatives are rodents, about half of the mammal species, and bats are 25%. It's also rodents and bats together make up the great majority of mammals. That means all mammals have hundreds of thousands of viruses in their genes, and bats and rodents they will have most of the viruses that exist among mammals. So if you take a virus by chance, it is a good chance that it will be about 25%. And there is absolutely nothing special about the viruses that come from bats or from other mammals. It's the same thing. So there are many many viruses coming from bats just because there are many bats, many individuals and many species. But there are more from rodents, more viruses coming from rodents, and more dangerous viruses coming from rodents. But that is not a big deal. People don't worry about that. It's the bat viruses that is the problem. How can that be? Take the next. Next picture. Yes. I mean, I am not a virus expert. I know nothing about viruses. You probably know more than me. But I am a European in contrast to you. And that's why I think I have a different perspective on this. This is a picture taken by one of my friends in Burma a couple of years ago. You see in this market, you could find bats, you could find elephants, pangolins, snakes, everything. And this is where the East Asian people, they eat all these things. And they use them for medicine. This is a medicine, of course. But, I mean, these people consume hundreds of thousands of different mammals. You will be exposed to hundreds of thousands of different mammal viruses, of course. In India, how many mammals do you eat? None, probably, or maybe very few. In Europe, we eat a few. We eat pigs, and we eat goats, and we eat cows, but not much more. This is, of course, all the viruses that transmit from other mammals to humans that will happen in Southeast Asia. And perhaps in Africa, which is also the same, where they also have this kind of bushmeat philosophy. Okay, take the next. Now we come into the thing which I have been thinking about a lot. I've checked. I don't know about the Hindus and Buddhists a lot, but I've checked with Sumit and a few others. Is there anything in the Buddhist, in the holy books or in a tradition that tells you that bats are dangerous or bad? I have not found anything, and the most of the replies I got is no, not as far as we know. I checked with Hindu friends and Buddhist friends in India. I checked with Chinese friends. No, in China, the bat is a symbol of luck and happiness and prosperity. It's the totally opposite. They use bats everywhere in temples and as a welcome symbol on the doorsteps of houses. And so that the bats is a really positive thing in Taoism in China. Or was. I mean, not talking about old tradition. There's absolutely no reason that the Chinese person should kill a bat. That's the last thing they would do. If we go to Islam, I have talked with some Islam friends, and they say, no, there is nothing in the Quran. I've even read the Quran. There is nothing about bats. And I have checked some Jewish friends in Israel, and they have even checked the Judaism expertise in the University of Tel Aviv. I say there is absolutely nothing about bats in Judaism. Then, I am a Christian, so that's a very different story. I don't. Can you correct me for the Hinduism and Buddhism? Do you know about anything?
Right now, I don't think we have anything, but we have one thing in our Hinduism is that we don't allow, or we don't, in the mythological side, we don't allow to kill any living organism. So it's in Hinduism we have Jivasya Bhojana, and every life on the earth is precious, and we are not allowing to kill. As mythology, and Buddhism is also very pure from the Hinduism, and they don't allow to kill any organism.
Yeah, that is very different from Christianity, I will tell you. Now, take the next next picture.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry. These are some pictures from Taiwan. In Taiwan, they have saved the old tradition. The communists never went to Taiwan, so the old China is still there. Taoism is still alive in Taiwan. Can you see the bats?
Yes, these are the bats.
103 bats here.
Oh, 100, huge color.
This is in a temple in Taiwan. You see the bats here?
There is one more bat on this top vessel.
There is one. There's also one in the right. There are bats everywhere. I think there were decorations here. That is a serious business in all the Chinese tradition. Okay, just to illustrate that now we are in Europe. 1366. This is a drawing. It's a picture from an Italian church, 700 years old. The guy to the left is Jesus. He's coming down to hell. Jesus in hell. That's the name of the picture. He's coming down to hell, where the condemned souls are still. He wants to save them, to take them up from hell to paradise. You see the guys to the right, who rule the hell.
Yeah, looks like bats.
Yeah, they are bats. It's a devil. It's a devil. There are many devils here down here. They all have bat wings. This is about the oldest pictures I've seen with this. From this time, 1300. We have all pictures from Italy and Spain where the hell is, where there is a devil. He will always have bat wings from this time. So take the next. Here's another church. Depicts the whole universe or the whole humanity. You see, the devil have bat wings. Take the next. Well, you see what there are small devils. This is a picture, a story, a biblical story depicted in a church in Italy, another church. You see?
Yes.
In this temple, there are the devils that are always trying to convince the monks to do the right thing, to do the wrong thing. But I have bat wings for sure. Next. Here is a churchyard, an old churchyard in Paris. The bats, they are not only rulers of hell and personify the devils. They are also a symbol of death. This is Napoleon's Bonaparte in Paris, his church. the deaths that week. Okay, take next. Yeah, the graves of people, they were decorated with bats. I think in this case, maybe this is not so bad. This is actually, I think, a protection of the grave. The bat will work as a protector of the people inside the grave. In this case, we have something different. It's not really the devil. It's just something protective. Okay, take next. Okay, next. Yeah. In the old times, this is from Sweden, but in the old times, you had an animal that nobody could see properly because there were no lights. They were everywhere. They were very, very common, and they could do fantastic things. They could fly in darkness, for example, and they were used for magic. Everybody used them for everything. That difficult decisions in life, they asked the bats. If you want to success in a love affair, you should have a bat in your pocket. And if you want to go to court, if you were called to court, I should give you, and you have done something wrong, to protect yourself, keep a bat in your pocket. And if you want to get the gift of speaking, you should have a bat tongue in your mouth.
Wow.
That would give you that would be your way. It would help you to convince the judge that you haven't done anything. There are hundreds or thousands of things like this that were used in everyday life for people, because they admired the bats, so they were used for everything. And then at the same time, now we are back in the Middle Ages, and now at the same time, the church wanted to take over this role. Catholic Church. In the Bible, you can read that don't touch a bat. The bats are unclean. If you touch or if you eat the bat, you can't eat them. Or even if you can't even touch them, because that will transform the uncleanness to you. You will become unclean yourself, non-touchable. So dealing with a bat is almost a very bad thing. It's totally the opposite of what people actually did. Okay. This is fantastic, in my opinion. This is the gun used by the king, by the Swedish king in 1603. It is made in 1603. A bat was used as a luck symbol, like it was in China. And before when he went to war, he had a bat on his rifle for protection. So the king didn't believe, even the king did this witchcraft and this magic thing. Although he was the ruler of the church officially in Sweden. Okay? Witches. I don't know if you have witches in India. I don't think. But you know what it is, I guess.
We have.
Witches could do witchcraft.
We have Indian version of witches.
A lot of evil.
Yeah, it's various stories are there.
The bats. There was okay. Witchcraft. Wait a minute. Okay. Well, at this time, you can understand the war between the bats and the church, and also we have this. There is an old European myth about somebody called Dracula, Blood the Devils. He was a ruler in what is now Hungary. He was a very bloodthirsty person. There are a lot of very violent stories about him. But when the Spanish conquistadors came home from America with real vampires, that actually were bats that could suck blood, and the vampire suddenly became a bat. That was in the 19th century. You can see these horror stories and horror films where they mixed up this Dracula, the old bloodthirsty ruler, and the bats. So now, since for the last 100 years, vampire stories and vampire films are coming over and over and over and over again, just to make it worse and worse. So there is another they use vampires to frighten people. Okay, take next. Okay, next. I will just you are so I mean how this propaganda against bats has gone on for about 1,000 years in Europe, and also let me just show you some beautiful pictures from a Swedish church today. The picture is made in the 18th century, but you see,
Yes, yes.
you recognize the devils by the bat wings. This is 500 years later than the Italian bats. Take the next. I think these are beautiful, but that's they are not good for bats. These are the old churches are always painted in the ceiling. The western part of the ceiling is hell, and the eastern part above the altar there is the God and paradise, and you can imagine where the bats are. You have birds with white wings in the east, and you have the dark bats with bat wings, and the night and the hell in the west. So this is the message from the church all the time.
Yeah.
People don't believe in this shit today, of course, but the tradition is old, and people are still a little bit worried about the bats. They still get the question about the rabies and this. I think this is deep in the sort of the brain of European people. Well, even this church is beautiful. The devil is there again, but yes, and even the death himself is there to the right. They recognize death by this. I'm almost finished now here, but take one more. Take the next. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I am right, but many people here in Europe, they know this tradition. They have been in these churches and they know everything about this. They know that bats are bad according to the church, but the whole Corona thing. But we have, I mean, everybody in the whole world, they try to use European tradition, European culture is spreading all over the world. If you go to America, they don't have this knowledge about this deep knowledge about the church and the hell and the bat and all this. So they view it much more. The bats have a much harder time in America than here, I think. And now I have in Africa, for example, people know nothing about this, but they still want to know all. They still want to buy all the European traditions, including the fear of bats. I mean, that is becoming very serious in Africa, although they have absolutely no reason to fear bats. Yeah, that's why I wrote this Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and Judaism. We are already talked about that, but it's the same. There is no reason to fear bats from the beginning, but it's imported with the European culture. That is my little cultural philosophy around this. I think I have spoken about 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Should we discuss something here?
Yes. I'm LM Dr. Mukesh Thakur from JSA Kolkata to ask few questions to sense.
You have to speak very carefully because my laptop, the sound is not very good. It comes and goes.
Okay, so we'll speak loudly. Yeah, Mukesh bhai.
Okay, yeah.
Not loud, but slowly.
Am I audible now to you, Dr. Rydell? Can you hear me now? Hello?
Professor,
Hello?
are you able
Can you
to
hear me, Doctor?
I can hear you, but Professor Jess, are you able to listen him?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mukesh.
So, it's a very enlightening review about the significance of the bat. My only question is people have so much talk about the COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2 virus has transferred to human and to bats and probably the penguin as an intermediate host. So, do you have any idea or you can comment on this, whether is there any specific species of bats pertaining to China that might have played a significant role in the COVID transfer? Because see, a lot of studies has been done proving that bat coronavirus is genetically close to the human coronavirus. But most we talk about, I mean, as far I know, specific species of bat that people have not pointed out. So, can you comment on it? On it, any specific species that might have contributed to the SARS-CoV-2, that means specific SARS-CoV-2?
Yeah, you come and go. I'm sorry, I cannot hear it. I cannot understand what you're saying.
So,
Okay, it's okay.
so Mukesh, can you type in the chat box? I will read.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Or if you take it shorter in one sentence, maybe.
Okay. So in between Dr. Mukesh is typing, anybody else want to ask some question? You can type in the chat box. Sir, Dr. Kakoli Banerjee want to know, do you think bats are the only source of coronavirus?
Oh, now I see. Yeah. I don't know. Again, I'm not a virus expert. I don't really know. But no, I don't think so.
Okay.
There were this SARS virus, and there were
MERS.
Yeah, exactly. MERS and SARS, and there were Ebola.
Nipah.
Yeah, they blame. It always ends up that they blame the bats, but I don't think there is any proof in any case that they actually come from bats, as far as I know. I mean, no, I don't think so. I think this is just, as far as I know, they blame bats. They end up with bats somehow, sooner or later. In the case of corona, they found a virus in a Chinese horseshoe bat that had a virus that was similar to the coronavirus, to the present one, 96. But I don't think there is any proof at all. It has to be similar only.
Dr. Kakoli, your question is going to become, I think, very well addressed by Dr. Mukesh Thakur. So he is going to speak on the same thing. Okay, Dr. Abi is also want to ask.
Okay, no, I'm sorry that it was not a good answer, but I don't think so. I mean, they look for viruses in bats. It has been very it's fashion to look for viruses in bats. So they will find a lot. They don't look in other animals. They don't look in elephants or crocodiles or anything. They look in bats, and that's where they will find them. You know?
So, Dr. Mukesh, we are still waiting for your question in the chat box.
No, I have already put my question there.
Okay.
My question is only that, is there any specific species of bat we can comment on it?
Okay.
Any specific species of bat that might have transferred to humans?
Okay. So Jane, the question is very simple. That do you have any knowledge about the particular species of bat which is having a high transmission rate of viruses to other species?
Yeah, okay, I can ask this. These are okay. I can answer those questions.
Okay.
First, there is only one infection carried by bats to humans, and that is rabies, and that's a virus. There is no bacterial infections that come from bats to humans, as far as I know. Nothing. And if the question is if all bats have viruses, every animal have thousands of viruses, millions maybe. So all bats for sure have viruses. Humans, cats, dogs, everything. So there are viruses everywhere. And there are more in bats than in most other mammals because there are more bats. That is an important thing.
One question from our university colleague, Dr. Salini Yadav. she want to ask you that do you believe that religion gives, okay, just a minute, it's going up. Do you believe that religion gives a direction, especially looking at the conflict with scientific temperament? There are two aspects. One is religious aspect, another is scientific aspect. So is there any conflict in between them to look at the disease model of such type of viruses?
If there is a conflict, no, I don't think that. I'm not talking about conflicts. I'm talking really because I think at least here, the religion, they accept, science is accepted. There is not really a conflict there. Two different things. But I'm talking about people's beliefs and people's feelings. That has been sort of that has been manipulated for 1,000 years. People are still people believe in the church, even though. And if you ask them now, say no, I believe in Darwin and also, but there is no open conflict. People, they still have all their beliefs. A really religious person, he will believe what's in the church. He will trust God, of course. But no, there is there is no conflict or argument or anything like that, as far as I know.
Okay. So many of the questions are coming, I think, are going to be addressed by our next speakers, because Dr. Mukesh and Dr. Abi are totally working on that virus aspect of animal originated virus aspect to human beings. So thank you very much, Professor Jains, for joining us far away from India and giving us a time and your little bit of experience on the religious aspect as well as the bats in the culture and the religion in various different religions in the world. So, I, on behalf of the entire team of Faculty Development Program, Guru Gobind Singh Independent University, giving you a warm respect and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Sumit. One more thing.
Yeah.
To your Hindu and the religions you have in India, don't buy all the shit from Europe.
Sure.
That is much better for the world.
Okay, fine, sure then.
See you.
Now, next speaker is Dr. Abi Vanak, and Dr. Abi, can you on your video? Abi, are you here?
Yeah, hi. Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So we have another speaker in the line is Dr. Abi Vanak, and Abi have a very good experience of working on viruses and especially on human aspect of the virus coming from the just Abi, let me read about that one. Yeah. So Dr. Abi is an associate professor currently and convener of the Center for Biodiversity and Conservation at ATREE, and he is also a fellow of Abi T, Department of Biotechnology, and Wellcome India Alliance program. I think that is known as OneHealth program supported by WHO. And Dr. Vanak is an ecologist with broad interest in animal movement ecology, disease ecology, savanna ecosystems, and wildlife in human-dominated systems. Subsequently, to his PhD in USA and postdoc in South Africa, studying of the movement ecology of Indian foxes in domestic dogs, elephants, large African carnivores, and savanna ecosystem dynamics. Dr. Abi Tamim returned to India in 2012. Since then, his research has included projects on the conservation of semi-arid savanna grasslands in peninsular India and adaptations of meso-carnivores to human-dominated landscapes. Dr. Vanak's interest in disease ecology led to him explore the dynamics of pathogen transmission between domestic animals and native wildlife using the OneHealth framework. And Dr. Vanak is one of the collaborators of various international projects with international collaborators and working on rabies in pan-India landscape. And he is currently examining the dynamics of rabies in multi-systems and the role of small and medium mammals as a tick host in the transmission dynamics of Kyasanur Forest Disease, that is also known as monkey fever and endemic to Shimoga district of Karnataka. So over to you, Abi. And Abi is also having a very great research profile. His RG score is 34 and citations are nearly 1500. Papers are 100 plus and having a 14 years of research experience. So, Abi, over to you, please.
Thanks very much, Sumit, for that introduction. If I could just present my screen,
Okay,
please enable that.
yes, let me give you that power.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Ami.
Share my screen quickly. Okay, so you can see my screen now.
Yes.
All right. So I'm gonna start my presentation by talking about operationalizing a One Health approach to understanding zoonosis in India. So Professor Jens was talking about rabies. It's one of these viral diseases that's not new. In fact, it's one of the earliest described viral diseases that we have in the world. In fact, you would be surprised to know that one of the first persons to have written to have given a written record of rabies is the saint Maharishi Shushruta. And in his epic tome, the Vedic text Shushruta Samhita. Now, various people are attributed to have written this text, but somewhere, and it was, the complete text itself may have been written somewhere between 1750 to 500 BC. But within the text, and this is a translation, there is a quote there that describes rabies very clearly. It says that if the patient becomes exceedingly frightened at the sight or mention of the very name of water, he should be understood to have been afflicted with gelatrisa or hydrophobia and be deemed to have been doomed. Okay, so this understanding is very clearly there. In fact, the term rabies itself, where does it come from? So, rabies belongs to a group of viruses called Lissa virus. Now, the term Lissa comes from the Greek from Lud, which is violent. And similarly, the Latin origin of rabies is supposed to be rabies, which is rage, madness, fury. But Sanskrit also has a similar sounding word for it, rabhasa, which is to do violence, and it's all associated with this image of a rabid dog that we have. But how many of you have seen rabid dogs in reality? Okay, I'll show you a few videos, and then you tell me if this is what you imagine when you think of a rabid dog. You know, so this is usually the kind of that picture one imagines when seeing a rabid dog. It's quite disturbing. Dogs can have this really frothy mouth, and they are biting and charging anything that they touch. But rabies can also present in various other ways. For example, here's a rabid dog that was seen walking on the streets of Sholapur, and it does not present any of the signs of rabies that you saw in the other animal. And most people would not even associate this animal as being rabid. In fact, it doesn't seem to show any of those symptoms. It's actually walking towards water, is very disoriented. Okay? And rabies doesn't just afflict street dogs. Here is a pet dog which is, it's clearly well cared for. It's a Labrador, a good breed, being brought in a car, and it's got locked jaw, so you can see that hasn't been able to close its mouth for several days. Its tongue is completely dry. Okay, so these are all cases of rabies in animals that we see around us all the time. Now, when Professor Jens was presenting, unfortunately, he didn't have the complete facts about rabies, certainly not in India. The thing is that India is a hotspot for rabies. Okay, if you look at the global burden of rabies, especially dog-transmitted rabies, then there's something like 60,000 rabies deaths globally. Okay, unfortunately, India has the dubious distinction of having the highest number of rabies cases in the world at about 20,000 human deaths a year. Okay, Professor Jens was completely right in saying that all of these, or most of these, more than 95% of these are from dogs. Bats are not implicated in rabies in India at all. So bat rabies is certainly not a problem per se. most of the cases that come, most of the rabies cases that we have in India do come from dogs. There's a very small proportion that come from other animals, mainly from wolves, jackals, occasionally from foxes, but could even come from cows, because even livestock can get rabies and they can also bite and so on. There's even one reported case of a chicken getting rabies, but I don't think that passed on the rabies to any other animal. Most of these rabies cases come from about 20 million dog bite cases a year, so it's a very serious problem. Okay? India, unfortunately, is also a hotspot for the risk of emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases in general. Okay, 60% of these are known to be zoonotic. So, what does zoonotic mean? It means that normally these diseases can come from animals, so they're circulating within an animal host, and they can pass from an animal to a human, but they can also obviously circulating within the animal host. 70% of these are of wildlife origin. Okay? Now, the framework that has been because of the complex nature of the disease transmission dynamics that occur here. So basically, you have wildlife, you have domestic livestock, you have forested areas. The framework that was developed for trying to understand and to combat these diseases is called the OneHealth framework, which basically says that people who work at the interface. Okay, so there are people who work on animals, there are people who work on animal health, and there are people who work on the environmental health aspects. Need to all come together. They need to coordinate, they need to collaborate, and they need to communicate amongst themselves. Okay, only then can you have what's called the One Health triad, which is that, and very simply, the motto of the One Health triad is, if you want to have healthy humans, then you also need to have healthy animals and a healthy environment. Okay, so this then achieves the best health outcomes for all three of these entities. Now, it sounds simple to say that, but how do you operationalize it? And where do these emerging zoonotic viruses come from? So look, all animals harbor viruses, and the source of these viruses and the way these viruses can spill over, or the directional, the manner in which these viruses can spill over from animals to humans, can be either direct, okay, or it can be through a vector such as a tick or a mite or a mosquito, okay, or it can be through an intermediate host. For example, pigs, livestock, chickens, ducks, camels, for example, in the case of Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, or pigs with the example of SARS, and so on. And then there can be a human amplification, as is happening with the COVID-19, where basically once the virus has spilled over, or once the pathogen has spilled over from animals to humans, then the transmission dynamics become independent of the animal host. They are now, humans become the primary host and the primary method of circulation of this virus. So with COVID-19, that's what's happening, as also happens with various other kinds of zoonosis or viruses that were once of zoonotic origin but have now become independent of that cycle. HIV is another excellent example. But there are many zoonoses that continue to have this cycle, where they continue to spill over from animals to humans, and this happens on an ongoing basis. So, there are many causes of this. So the first stage, the pre-emergent stage, is when there is some disruption of these natural cycles. Okay, it could either be because there's an increased rate of contact between humans with these animal reservoirs, whether they be bats or rodents or primates. As Professor Jens was indicating, the only reason that bats seem to have a lot of attention is because there's a whole host of coronaviruses. There's also a whole host of other viruses also that bats can harbor. But it's not just bats that harbor these viruses. Indeed, bats, rodents, primates, and a whole host of other mammals, birds can harbor a lot of viruses But the viruses that most commonly spill over to humans or are most closely related to viruses that spilled over to humans tend to come from three main groups of mammals, which are bats, rodents, and viruses. So that's why there's a lot of focus on these groups. Okay. And this, as I said, there's also the expansion of the wildlife-human interface or the wildlife-livestock interface that results in a greater risk of the viruses coming over. But the biggest risk factor, and this is what is most overlooked, look, it's not the eating habits of people in China or Southeast Asia or wherever else that's giving rise to pandemics. Okay, let's get that very clear, because those spillover conditions would remain local. For example, there hasn't been an Ebola virus pandemic as yet. Okay, if there would be pretty tragic. But the condition that causes pandemics is globalization. Okay, it's our economic system that has led us to this current crisis. We can rapidly transmit. We've become the main vectors. Our lifestyles have become the main driver of these pandemics, and not just local eating habits and so on. Okay, so it's the economic system that has contributed to this. So let's go back a little bit to how to operationalize a true One Health surveillance system. I'll take you to the example of Pune city. This is where we are doing most of our work. We are also doing work in other cities, but Pune is an excellent example. So this is a One Health rabies project supported by the India Alliance program. This is a DBT Wellcome Trust project. So there we partnered with an excellent NGO called Rescue, the Rescue Charitable Trust. They're an animal hospital. They help animals on the streets, and we partnered with them. And they had this excellent system in place where they would go out, and if people could report potentially rabid animals or any diseased or sick animal, and they would go out and immediately bring it to their hospital. So then we collaborated with them, and we started testing these animals. Okay, so I'm going to show you a slightly rather alarming picture. I just want to before that, I'll quickly acknowledge that this is a large collaborative project. These are the various organizations and funding institutions that are supporting us. Okay, and also want to emphasize that One Health requires collaboration. If you do not collaborate, you cannot study emerging viruses. You can do little bits of work here and there, but to really understand the complete picture, the One Health framework requires collaboration. Okay, so we use these tests. These are rapid tests. You can take a brain biopsy after the animal is dead, and you can test them, and within 10 minutes you can get a result. So the bottom cartridge that you see here shows a rabies positive case. The one on top is rabies negative. Okay, so this GIF that you can see now shows each red dog. This is a map of Pune city. Okay, each red dog is a rabies positive case, and you can see as the months progress, the number of cases keep increasing. Okay, and people did not suspect that there was such a large rabies outbreak going on in the city. Okay, but once you start looking, you will start finding. All right. So between October and September, we had we tested 318 suspected cases, of which more than half were positive. We also detected 3 bovine rabies cases, and we know of at least 32 people who were bitten by rabid animals. But thankfully, because this is a large city, then prophylaxis is available. Post-exposure prophylaxis is available. People have better education about rabies, awareness about rabies, so they're able to go to hospitals in time, get the vaccination, get immunoglobulin in time, and therefore there are 0 human cases thus far. But this is typical of most cities. They might have a large outbreak, but they won't have very high rabies cases. And this is because most of the rabies cases, those 20,000 rabies cases I spoke about in India, they all occur in rural areas. Okay, most 95% of them occur in rural areas. So this is the way you also need to study them. So we went out and found we started doing a project on dog ecology in the rural areas. We went out and collared a number of dogs. Okay, we also went out and fit GPS collars to understand the movement of other hosts, so jackals, jungle cats, and Indian foxes in the same landscape. And so we try to understand what is the overlap between these different animals, different species, and what is the potential for transmission of rabies between these different hosts. Okay, and this is how we can start building these models and parameterize these models. Okay, so all of this will feed into a broader goal of zero rabies by 2030. Okay, and we hope to do that. So when we look at other emerging and de-emerging infectious diseases, we find that there's a tight correlation between biodiversity hotspots in the world, human population density, and the risk of emerging diseases. Because obviously, where there's higher biodiversity, that means there are more host species, potential host species. So there are more rodents, more primates, more bats, more ungulates, more carnivores. And all of these also have a high diversity of associated pathogens, many of which are also potentially zoonotic. Okay. And in India, in particular, we are really vulnerable because we have amongst the highest densities of humans. We have very high faunal diversity. Okay, and we have a really high human domestic wildlife interface. Okay, and we also know that people in India access livelihood benefits from these natural ecosystems. So when they're doing that, they're increasingly exposed to zoonotic diseases. Okay, so how do we understand some of these risk factors, and how can we allow people to continue to access these benefits whilst minimizing the impacts of these zoonotic diseases? So this is a project that we again working with a large interdisciplinary team of people. Okay, this is an example of a OneHealth project on Kyasanur Forest Disease, funded by the Global Challenges Research Fund. It's led by our partners, so you can see the large team here. The project is called the Monkey Fever Risk Project. You can go and look it up, and we have a website, and you can see the work that we're doing. So this is funded by the Medical Research Councils UK, and it's a consortium of institutions, both international as well as Indian. It includes the Centre for Ecology, the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, which is the lead partner, which is the lead institution. And the Indian institutions include ATREE, which I'm a part of, the Government of Karnataka, the Department of Health and Family Welfare Services of the Government of Karnataka, the Indian Council of Agricultural Research is Nivedi, the National Institute of Epidemiology in Chennai, and ICMR's National Institute of Traditional Medicine in Belgaum. Okay, as well as other institution partners such as Dakshin Foundation and Institute of Public Health in Bangalore. Okay, so again, large interdisciplinary team of people, and this team includes ecologists such as myself and Beth Peirce from the UK, disease modelers, vector specialists such as Dr. Balakrishnan from India, epidemiologists, social scientists, because social scientists are a core part of the team as well. Okay, so let me give you a brief background about Kyasanur Forest Disease. It's a flavivirus. So now all of you know about coronaviruses, but there are various other kinds of viruses. Rabies is a Lissa virus. Kyasanur Forest Disease is a flavivirus. Okay, and this flavivirus causes debilitating hemorrhagic disease. Okay, there are greater than 500 cases per annum, and earlier there used to be fairly high mortality, between 10 to 30%. But because of better healthcare facilities now, this mortality rates have reduced. The people who suffered the most were either Adivasi groups or resident and migratory farmers and plantation and forest workers who were affected. Now, this is a true complex disease because it's not just a straightforward, viral transmission through airborne particles. Or it includes a transmission that consists of ticks, rodents, and I'll show you a diagram of it. Okay, so the virus itself can be found in fed adults or adult ticks of certain species, mainly ticks from the Haemaphysalis genus or Ixodus species. And there is some evidence, or well, we're looking for the evidence of transovarial transmission, basically where an infected tick may also pass on the virus to its eggs. So there's the virus transmitting through the ovaries to the eggs itself. So basically, ticks may be born already infected with the virus. We don't know yet, but we're looking for that evidence. Okay, so the first stage of the tick is the unfed larvae, and those emerge between October and December, post monsoon, and then they go on to feed in small mammals, monkeys, and birds. And if any of those are a host of the KFT virus, then the larva itself becomes infested with the virus. So it becomes a carrier or a vector for the virus. Okay, and these larvae then after the blood meal will metamorphose into the next stage, the nymph stage. Okay, and then these unfed nymphs can potentially infect humans, and then humans can become infected with Kyasanur Forest disease. There's also a role of monkeys that is suspected here. Basically, monkeys can become an amplifying host. So when monkeys get, things like when small mammals such as rodents or birds get infected with the virus, they don't develop high viremia. They just remain as a host species. They may be asymptomatic, or they may not get sick from KFT. But if a monkey, especially a macaque or a langur monkey, becomes infected with the virus, then they can potentially fall sick, or can develop really high viral loads, and they'll die from virus. Okay, so if you start seeing dead monkeys on the forest floor, then you know that potentially they also act like as a sentinel. Then you know there's KFT. It's KFT season. Okay, and that's typically when the KFT epidemic starts in the forests of the Western Ghats. And it's not just restricted to Shimoga. It's found in Kerala. It's found in Maharashtra. It's found in Goa. And this spread has happened in the last decade or so. Okay, so as you can see, it's a complex cycle. Even the adults can have KFD virus in them, and other large mammals such as cattle, deer, gore, and so on can act as amplifiers for the tick population itself. Okay. Now, this work was done, this pioneering work of trying to understand the emergence of KFD. It was amazing work. It was really good detective work done in the late 1950s by an interdisciplinary team led by Dr. Rajagopalan and a host of others. It involved a U.S. collaboration. Okay, and this led to the formation of the National Institute of Virology. Okay, unfortunately, this collaborative model was lost from India. This early OneHealth work that was done there was actually lost, and then as typically tends to happen in India, people went back to their silos. Then you have the Institute of Virology doing its virological work. The Institute of Epidemiology does its epidemiological work. People tend to not talk to each other. Veterinarians do their own thing. Public health specialists don't do their own thing. Ecologists are nowhere in the picture. Okay, but these interdisciplinary models are really needed for understanding emerging for zoonosis. Is because the current tools that we have tend to focus on only one or two aspects, either the social or the ecological or the epidemiological. They don't try and link all of these together, and that's why an interdisciplinary approach tends to work better, because it asks how do these social and ecological risk factors vary, and how can you link them to what's going on underlying. Like for example, forest change. There is landscape change in the Western Ghats. How is that affecting the risk factor? How is people's behavior affecting? How are the interaction between livestock and these ticks affecting the risk factors? So we started putting all of those together, okay, and we started developing models to predict the outbreak of KFT. And this is a paper that was just published in PLOS and TDS, okay, where we developed a model and we were able to predict a new hotspot for KFD occurrence, and that hotspot. So normally KFD occurs in Shimoga Taluk, in Shimoga district, but we were able to predict its occurrence in Sagara Taluk as well. And that next year Sagara had an outbreak of KFT. So in advance we were able to predict it. So our model works. Okay, but you can basically once you have these kinds of models and you can try and understand the underlying risk factors, you can start even trying to mitigate some of these, or try and push for better vaccination in these areas and so on. Now, how do you scale up these One Health research models? So the government of India has taken cognizance of some of this work, and now a new national mission on biodiversity and human well-being has been launched. Just a few days ago, there was a webinar. UNDP had organized it, but the MOEFCC had hosted this webinar. The National Biodiversity Authority, Dr. Ravi Umadi had hosted it. And in that, the biodiversity and health component, wherein One Health is Zoonosis is an important framework, was highlighted, where we are operationalizing research networks through a large grants program. The pilots phase will set up about 25 sentinel surveillance sites all across India, and it's reasonably well funded. Hopefully, it'll once this COVID outbreak ends, this program will be launched, and approximately 6 billion fund, Indian rupees fund has been proposed for this. Okay, and we hope that with that, scenes such as this, where we have the poorest of poor suffering the worst consequences of things that are no fault of theirs, okay, that can be avoided, because we can try and detect these viruses, because this is not the last virus that's going to affect us. As we go, as our economic lifestyles, as remember that COVID-19 is not a third world problem. It was a first world problem that was imported, and the people who suffered the most were the people who had the least to do with this virus, with the emergence of this virus. So hopefully we can be better prepared the next time something like this happens, and we owe it to these people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. Such an enlightening work you have shared. So I was tracking a little bit about the One Health program, and I would like to mention one thing here, that this COVID or Corona is also going to be in the same framework. Then we can get it more detail about the sociological aspect, the biological aspect, the ecological aspect of the bats, how the virus is, because bat is going to be currently reported as one of the largest reservoir of many viruses. Those are yet to be known to us, and such type of trans-sectorial collaborative projects are very important to track the viruses and the type of diseases are coming from animals. And I have requested Dr. Kakoli Banerjee to ask few questions, because he was writing in the chat box. So Dr. Kakoli, you can ask direct to Dr. Abi.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah, Dr. Abi, very nice presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, please ask your question.
Please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, then Abi, I think.
What is the question?
Okay, she wrote some very interesting question. Let me read it here.
Now, there's a comment there. I'm not able to see the question.
Sir, there are some.
So she asked about, do you think intensive farming is one of the major cause of spreading of virus?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good question. So look, whenever we bring animals together at really high densities, okay, then the potential for transmission of any pathogen from animal to animal really increases. And the rates of mutation of the viruses, especially for RNA viruses. So let's just stick to viruses for now, because when we have things like fungal and bacterial diseases, we have at least we have some form of antibiotic that we can use for them. With viruses, the only way of controlling them is through vaccines, effective vaccines, whenever they're developed. So in the case of RNA viruses, they tend to mutate very quickly and very rapidly. Most of those mutations, of course, are harmless, and they might not have any effect. But every once in a while, a mutation might occur, which might aid in host shifting. Okay, which might allow a virus to jump from one host to another. For You can again take the case of COVID-19, those development of those protein spikes, which allow it to bind to the ACE2 receptor. Okay, there are many other cases. So whenever you have large scale intensive farming that occurs, okay, and also when you have breeds that are developed for high productivity, okay, they tend to be really susceptible and vulnerable. Okay, they tend to get sick quite easily. If you take our native breeds, so this is the difference between intensive farming systems and extensive farming systems. Intensive farming systems where you're only aiming at high production. Okay, then you tend to lose out on the resistance to diseases that many of these breeds develop locally. Whenever breeds are developed locally, so that's the main difference. And we seem to be losing that out more and more in our sort of mad rush for increasing productivity, for getting things cheaper and cheaper. So that is a real cause for concern. So that's something that we really need to be concerned about when we talk about food production systems, because we tend to focus too much right now on, for example, we've said, oh, these eating habits of people in Southeast Asia or China or whatever, these wild meat markets. Yes, wild meat markets can intensify some of these risks, but if you think of things like avian flu or swine flu, those did not come from meat markets. Those came from these intensive production systems. Also think about antibiotic resistance, AMR. That's another huge problem, because we are pumping our livestock full of routine antibiotics. Okay, many of these are last defense antibiotics. So this is a huge problem.
So thank you, Abi, very much. And you can give another reply in very short, which is like which transmission of virus is more contagious, anthropootic or zoonotic?
Look, contagion depends on various aspects. When it comes to things like virus in particular, any contagion that has aerosol transmission will be far more contagious, okay, than any other that requires a vector, or if it requires, again, forward and backward transmission from the animal host to humans. Okay, so human to human transmission, of course, is the easiest way of transmission. I mean, think of the common cold. All of us suffer from common colds every year. It just doesn't cause high mortality or high death. But that those forms of transmission, tuberculosis is another one, HIV, for instance. So these are the ones that are going to cause the highest rates of transmission. They are the most contagious forms of pathogens that we have here. So certainly, human to human transmission is the highest risk factor, and is at a higher risk than animal to human transmission.
So thank you, Abi, for joining.
Sumit,
Yes, sir.
I think
Yes, sir.
this question is also asked from the panelist, from the speaker.
Okay.
This is by Suresh Kumar. Is a strain of
No, sir.
SARS-CoV-2.
Sir, keep this for next speaker. He is speaker. I have read it already. So thank you for joining us. And now let me introduce our another speaker. And he is Dr. Mukesh Thakur, and he belongs to Bulandshahr, UP, and having a great bio, more than research experience, and published around 50 research papers, and all these research papers are very valuable in the evolutionary biology as well as in the biotechnology, having a RG score of 26, and citations are more than 230 citations. And currently Mukesh is scientist C at Zoological Survey of India, and in the department Molecular Systematics and Forensic Sciences. So over to you, Mukesh. And Mukesh is very good friend from Wildlife Institute of India days. Yes, please.
I'm on board. Hello.
Yes.
So a very good afternoon to you. I largely work in conservation genetics, wildlife forensics, and ecology and wildlife ecology. I am not presenting more on the review of the COVID. We all hearing many presentations this morning. Specifically, I am talking about how SARS-CoV is spread in India and the dynamics. I mean, we all hearing about that several mutations have been emerged, and we all know that the first emerging outbreak came from the Wuhan only, but then how it has spread it to India, how many haplotypes we have of COVID in India.
Dr. Mukesh.
Yeah.
Can you keep mic close to your mouth?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. Now.
Okay. So I would be speaking specifically on how the SARS-CoV is spread in India. What are the evolutionary aspects we can understand? I mean, emerging different mutants, different haplotypes, and I have done certain in silico analysis to understand the mutations and molecular docking approach to understand different emerging haplotypes in the country. So let me share the screen. I have a few slides to share with you. My screen is visible. Hello?
Yes, it's coming. Yeah, it's visible now.
It's visible now. So let me go to the very first slide. This is the present scenario, today's scenario, as per the WHO dashboard. So WHO dashboard says we have about 5.4 million people infected worldwide across in 116 countries, and 3.43 lakhs plus has already occurred. So WHO, we all know, has declared this a pandemic situation. So either worldwide, we all face challenges to curb this pandemic. This is a scenario in India. So you can see the graph; it is on the increasing. So there have been certain cases. I mean, we know that the very first case emerged in the Kerala, and then there have been few cases from the Italian tourist that was found in Jaipur, Rajasthan. At simultaneously, few cases were also reported in Telangana state of the foreign travelers. So I have hypothesized a very fundamental question: what has been the spread of the or the origin of the SARS-CoV-2 in India? Whether a few cases has been, the foreign travelers, they came to India and then it has spread locally, or the virus itself, come from different individuals, and multiple travelers from different various countries has contributed or transmitted transmission of the virus in the country. So whether it is locally transmitted or the virus has been spread from the multiple regions. So I have first collected information from the source available from the media. I mean, what are the different cases that have emerged? So in chronological order, I have compiled all these cases right from the beginning in the December, January cases now, very recently. And then I have identified and analyzed the genome. So there is one global platform has been made for the virus database. This is a German database facilitating all this SARS-CoV-2 genome all across the world. So I downloaded all these sequences present and then submitted from India. As of now, we have about 300 plus genomes that has been uploaded on the global database and it is accessible for the public domain. So I've downloaded all those sequences and then analyzed what are the how the virus has been evolved. So before I go further, we should understand how we compare the global data set. This is the slide that I have taken from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare website. So it says that India positions at the end if we compare the infections per 10 lakh per lakh population. So if you see the screen, India we have 7.1 cases per lakh population. So still it is not that severe if we compare data across the world. However, we are facing this challenge which needs to be stopped immediately. So there is some fundamental things for the coronaviruses. They are RNA viruses. They are very much they are encapsulated in an antibody, and then their genome size is approximately 27 to 35 kbp, which is about 30,000 base pair long viral genome. And this is how the virus genome looks like. So if you see this slide, on my left, the 5' UTR, and then on my right, the 3' UTR. So these are the two ends of the genome. So this is approximately 30,000 base pair in human. So I try to understand the virus genome. So there are about 12 genes in the virus genome. So you see there are genes labeled as ORF, and then there are 4 genes. This is S, E, N, and G. So these are 4 structural genes. So virus is made up of some structural proteins and non-structural proteins. When I say structural proteins, so that means these are the proteins, or these are the genes which code for those proteins that is the structure of the virus. So it may be the virus envelope, virus substrate, and virus nucleocapsid and envelope. So, and the ORF are the genes which is non-structural proteins, and their scientists are also given. You see the ORF1 AB gene, which is about 2000 long, nucleotide long. So this actually contributes about 2/3 of the entire genome. So this is the largest gene present in the virus genome. I try to understand how these structural proteins are made up, and how virus mutation happen in any of these structural proteins, how it change the infection in the human cell. So this is the first study that has been published from the China. It is in Nature Medicine. This talk about these spike proteins, glycoprotein, spike glycoprotein. We all know this. I hope if some of you are not aware of, I just discuss this slide. So the pink color shows this spike glycoprotein, which is about 1200 receptor in size, and then this is divided into S1 and S2 subunit. Right? So within the S1 subunit, there is a receptor binding domain here highlighted in red. So this receptor binding domain, this is the site which primarily infects the human cell. So there is another gene which has been predicted in humans called ACE2 gene, as we will be talking about in the next slide. So this receptor binding domain interact with the ACE2 gene in human. So if there is a binding happen between the two proteins, then only virus gets entered to the human cell. If there is a loop binding or there is no binding at all, so virus even cannot. So even we may carry virus, but may not impact if there is if it is a loose binding between the receptor binding domain and the of human cell. So this study is also talk about how the bat and pangolin coronaviruses are similar to the human SARS-CoV-2. So as we all have been discussing since morning, that it has originated from bat, and probably pangolin has been the intermediate host. If you see the part A of this picture, so there are certain nucleotides which is highlighted in the blue boxes. So these shows these human SARS-CoV-2 has certain SNP that has been contributed by the bat, and also certain SNP that has been contributed by the pangolin. So most similar sequence of SARS-CoV-2 with the bat coronaviruses. So that is how studies relate the human SARS-CoV-2 as originated from the bat, while pangolin has contributed as an intermediate host. So when I go to this slide, this talks about the ACE2 receptor. So I was just mentioning like the RBD, the receptor binding domain, it interact with the ACE2, and when this binding happens, then only enter to the human body. So there has been one study, this was published in Cell Discovery, that talk about the variants of the ACE2. So our human ACE2 also have a different variant. So there are about 50 SNPs, or I can say the alleles that have been identified, and their frequencies are given in different countries and the continents. So you can see this is data for the America, and this is for the China, and Europe, Africa, and so on. This talk about the variety of alleles and their frequency and of in different human populations. This study talks about, if you consider the East Asian population in China, we have a variety of alleles with frequencies relatively higher than the other human population. And this also talks about the ACE2 expression in human cells. It's always a higher side in East Asian populations. That is why possibly the East Asian population is, comparatively more affected than the other population of humans, because of the higher expression of ACE2, which facilitates the coronavirus of the spike glycoprotein to interact and get entry. So I have compiled all this information from different sources. So these are some of the early cases that has reported in India. So since January 2003, so there are 3 cases reported from Kerala, and then from these 23 Italian tourists, they arrived in Delhi, and from Delhi they have had a bus to Rajasthan, and before they get found corona positive, they have already infected more than 500 people. And even I tell you the background history of the first 3 cases in Kerala. The student, they were a medical student studying in Wuhan, and after their study break, they traveled from Wuhan to Munich, and to Kolkata, and Kolkata to Kerala. So in this during this travel, they have already infected more than 300 people. So there are some unconfirmed reports, which shows that they have already infected 300 people before they get diagnosed positive for coronavirus. At the same time, like if you see in the March, there have been cases coming up from different parts of the country. So a person in Delhi who had a travel from Italy, a 25-year-old engineer that has traveled from Dubai. So these are the subsequent cases that have been keep coming into the country. At the same time, this is a special case when March 7, Government of India, they sent a team of scientists from virology to travel to Iran and brought some of the suspected samples of Indian citizens that were there in Iran, largely from Jammu and Kashmir, and they were for a festival there. So they brought these samples, and which was then diagnosed with virology. So what I did, I have downloaded all these genomes from the global database, and I try to analyze them to understand how the coronavirus spread, what is the specific strain or the mutant which has a different virulence or genicity, And I also analyze the demographic effects. So we all know the cases of coronavirus is keep on increasing, but how about the virus demography, whether it is stability or still proliferating. So this also I have analyzed the real-time data set, and then we have predicted different mutations and their role in viral spread and adaptive selection of the corona. So this is the primary results, and this talk about see in left hand side you see the phylogenetic analysis, we correlate with the phylogeography of the spread of different hepatites. Let me tell you. So these are the Wuhan H1 genome. This is the primary first reference genome of coronavirus that appeared. And our first cases of India that had a diversity from Wuhan itself, they completely clustered along with Wuhan one, and then these all are the Iran samples that has the government of India brought to the country for their Zoonosis. And then there have been certain cases from Italy, and they have a prevalence from Italy. They assigned very much with the reference cases, early cases of cases in Italy. So if you see the haplotype information, this is not very much clear because all these data is very much tightly clustered. You see these blue color shows the all the haplotype that has a ancestry of origin from Iran, and the green shows the ancestry of origin from Italy, and this red first two cases that is reported in Kerala has originated from the Wuhan. So these figures show the first 35 initial source genome available on the global data set till April 21st. So there are again two cases here which is highlighted in yellow. These two patients have a diversity from the mixed ancestry, but however this is doing one clade that is the European clade, or I can say that. So we during this time frame we got three different clades. One is European or Italy, Iran, and then this is from China. When I analyze the in different time frames this information with the data available up to May 16, and the third figure is the C figure for the data available up to May 5. So I would like to bring your attention in the figure B. So you just see there are this all the in the second time frame the haplotypes that emerge I have highlighted in green. Okay, so all haplotypes here in West Bengal, they have a ancestry of origin from this particular hepatite. This was a case in Telangana state, which has a UK travel history. However, again clustered with the Italian plate. So I can say all cases till this time have of West Bengal originated from a one case. It is that is in Telangana had a early sign of the community spread of the virus. And again, this is Karnataka. So all these three being haplotypes, they are originated from the H8. So these H8 has transmitted the virus to these three guys. And if I see here, there is no further increase of the Irani haplotype, perhaps because these all the cases that government of India has brought, this is brought from Iran. However, if you see again here, the Karnataka has a history of having mixed ancestry. They have a European haplotype also, and they have a haplotype that is from China. So this is first reference of China. And this is also the from Kerala. So in the time frame C, you can see up to May 5th, we have certain new captures, and here I have highlighted in cyan blue. So you see the haplotype at 27 and then haplotype 20. They have proliferated anything. So it shows the a kind of star-like phylogeny here and here also. So H40 and H27, these has very much proliferated in India by May 5th. And again, I have tried to cluster time this information state-wise. So if you see here, these all haplotypes in Gujarat, and this is all in Delhi, and this again from Haryana, the- I just wanted to highlight here, for some reason, F27, which has an ancestry from origin, Italy origin, and this F40, which has a China origin, has proliferated in India. And if you see the compare the B and C figure, there are certain new names of the haplotypes here, and it's all represent from the Jammu and Kashmir, mostly from Kargil. These haplotypes will from the Kargil, and uh, so as this key time frame data will tell us how the coronavirus has spread in the country. I then, this is a very recent analysis up to May 19. You can see all here how, as the data being uploaded on the global data set, I keep collecting and downloading all this data and keep analyzing how the virus spread in the country. So if you see, these are three cases from Italy, the early three cases from Italy. As of now, I can say the H2, H44, and H1 are the three haplotypes that has proliferated in India. So I wanted to see why there are certain haplotypes which are proliferating more, some haplotypes which have not been further transmitted. So is there any adaptive selection in these haplotypes? So they might have certain mutations. These haplotypes might have certain mutations. Is facilitating virus to be more rapidly than the haplotype. So what I did, I try to understand the mutations, and these mutations specifically I have focused on the RBD, as I had discussed in the very first slide, RBD and for the domain. So the virus, it has specifically talking about this spike glycoprotein. So we have S1 and S2 domain. Within S1 we have RBD domain, and this is the first protein that interacts with the human ACE2. So these are certain mutations. I have highlighted them by their names.
Dr. Mukesh, can you keep mic closer to your mouth? The voice.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes. So then I prioritize specific those mutations which are in the receptor binding domain, because we already know these are the this is the domain which primarily interacts with the human cell, and the first precursor molecule, if there is not tight binding between the receptor binding domain and ACE2, the virus will not enter to the human cell. So we prioritize these mutations and we try to understand how they change the protein dynamics or the interaction with the human cell. So these I have prioritized 5 mutations. So based on the their locations in the RBD, and this was the mutation was prominent and present in all the genomes that we have analyzed. So about more than 80% of the genome that we have this D614 gene. So I wanted to see why this particular mutation there in most of the genomes that we analyze, and how it's affecting the virus transmission. One mutation I have also tried in H40, and this was the one of the haplotypes which was more proliferating. So we prioritize these 5 mutations to see the spread and the transmission of the virus. So this is a little more technical, but I'm going in detail. Just wanted to show these are all 5 mutations that I have selected, and this is all the document where we see the mutation of the virus mutation with the spike glycoprotein. So here I can show you this is the spike glycoprotein, and this is the ACE2 in the human cell. And here are the sites where this mutation has happened. So we know the A, B, C mutations, M1, M2, M3 happen in the RBD, while M4 happened in the S1 domain that I was discussing, the D614, which is most frequent and abundant mutation found in more than 80% population of the country. So how it affects the protein dynamics? So we have tried to understand the molecular document where this is the human cell, and this is the spike glycoprotein. So how the mutation changes the binding affinity. So we have done we have selected the wild one. Wild one is the protein that is the one protein. I mean the first genome that has been Wuhan. So we separated their genome to like that protein, the wild protein, and then these are the 5 mutations that we have summarized here. So I want to drag your attention to these values, 15.4 and 14.2, which is higher than the wild type. So I just wanted to highlight here the M4 and M5, so this and the E. These two figures shows that this increase the binding affinity. So I have identified these two mutations which actually affect the binding affinity between ACE2 and RBD. So though this mutation D614G is present outside the receptor binding domain, however, it has a trans effect and increase the binding affinity. So again, this is a time infection analysis and prioritize also patients to understand whether these mutations are stabilizing or they stabilize the protein or not. So this wanted to see if it is figure is in black, that means that this mutation has a more stabilizing effect. So I again say these make the complete protein black. So stabilizing all these two mutations are stabilizing in nature except this I4T4K. So this one was not so stabilized. So we know this mutation can be stabilizing or destabilizing. So if it is non-stabilizing, that means the protein they make will not be stable, and even the virus would not be beneficial. I mean, the mutation is not beneficial for the virus, and it might be passed out from the population. However, those viruses which help those mutations which help the virus in proliferation and they or have a role in adaptive selection, they are in the population. It is a very major phenomena that all these in ecology also, when any species put under the pressure, so either they vanish or they develop certain local adaptations. So these adaptations might be caused by these some of the beneficial mutations. So and this beneficial mutation might happen during the replication of the viral genome. So this is kind of very preliminary finding that we have done. We have analysis of the existing genome, and I can say these are the certain mutations that might be facilitating viral copy selection. So if you see the D614, this is the bonding pattern or the bonding pattern change. So these are all the non-synonymic mutations. So we know the synonymic mutations which do not cause any change in the protein. However, the non-synonymic mutations are those which change the protein in some way. So for example, D614 say aspartic acid. However, this mutation causes the formation of a glycine. So glycine is a nucleotide molecule, and then it increases the flexibility of the virus to infect the ACE2. So this is how I have just demonstrated how the different mutations which affect virus get evolved and get more flexible for binding with the gene. So this is one part of the analysis that we have done, and in the other part, we also did the understand the virus demography. So you see this new line shows how the virus demography has been first outbreak in the country. So I can say this is still increasing, and we should expect several thousand cases in the coming days. So it's not stable. The demography shows the line. It is all in increasing mode, and we overlaid all the data that is available from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, so all these real-time cases, and it's very much fit with our demography analysis. So analysis that we have done is talk about the virus. It's not in the stability mode; it is still increasing. Demographically not stable. And this is again a paramite distribution which is again a bimodal in nature that also corroborate that the virus though have a recent expansion but is still in the proliferation stage. So this is first part of the work that we have done. Now I will again bring you to this virus genome, and we have now characterized certain epitopes which are present on these four structural proteins that I have discussed in the beginning. That virus has a four structural protein: envelope, membrane, nucleic acid, and substrate. And these are there are some this information about the protein, their molecular weight, their theoretical point, their index. What we have done in the second phase, we have all the 3D structures of all the proteins, the protein of the virus. And then we try to understand the epitopes present on the viruses. So epitopes are those sites and it is bind with the antibodies. So what we have done, we first model the structures of the all four proteins. Then we have scrutinized the epitopes of T cells and T cell and IFN gamma, which is more technical, but like the T cell epitopes are those by the primary and primary immunity, while the T cell is providing immunity, and IFN gamma is responsible for the cytokine. So what we have done, we try to understand the distribution of epitopes. We can respond to the B cell and T cell, and based on this, we have characterized and mapped all then continuous and non-continuous epitopes on four structural proteins. Based on this, we have identified some of the common epitopes to design a multi-epitope vaccine. It is more kind of in silico analysis, scientific analysis, where we have combined all these epitopes present on these four structural proteins, and then we design a recombinant model of the vaccine. Can have a genetic mode in after. I will come to the slide to be clear. So all these four proteins we have predicted antigen. So the score is above greater than 0.4, so it is antigenic. So protein was comparatively more antigenic than after. So we have then predicted the T cell and B cell epitope. So T cell epitope is responsible for the prediction. I mean, responsible for the imaging of the class 1, and the SPL epitope is for the helper T cell. It is responsible for the induction of the class 2. So these are the T cell these are the certain epitopes, and then we have identified on the parameters, they are antigenic and non-allergic. So this is again the of the different epitopes present on the SCL, and this is for the B cell epitope. So we have again identified all these epitopes based on their antigen, and based on this, then we got several. These are all continuous epitopes. That means they are present on the surface of the virus and protein. The discontinuous epitope they are present in the protein. So when the 3D structure, the tertiary structure of the protein, the discontinuous epitope they are inside the protein. They are infection with the and the epitope. I mean the HLA alleles. So then these are the different epitopes. We have then modeled the different epitopes then on all these structural proteins, and then we found what are the common epitopes. This is epitope of the IFN gamma, and this is a recombinant model of vaccine. We can see here there are 7 epitopes for CTL, and there are 7 epitopes for SPL and 4 epitopes for IFN gamma. This is the sequence available here, and if we construct a kind of model, this model based on the multi-epitope modeling, you can say this might have immunostimulating role in the human cell. So we tested this with a model in myself. I'm not reading this. So this is the structure of a recombinant vaccine that we have proposed, and we try to understand their different factors, and then here we have injected the vaccine. This is the life the vaccine, and there we have injected the vaccine, and this vaccine this is based on the computer simulation. We have a re-injection of this vaccine. So this recombinant vaccine has the power to stimulate the immunogenic response. So you see here, GM, IgM2, it all increases after the increasing of, after 3 doses of vaccine. So this is kind of a more in silico approach where it talks about the virus population goes down with the interval of the infection. And here is the responses of the B cell and T cell and T helper cells, which increases. If we inject the vaccine 3 times, so we see that decrease of the virus is here. And increase of the immune response in the cell. And this is for the cytokine. So we talk about how the antigen goes down and how the IF gamma, the cytokines, macrophages, impact of the antigen, how it goes up. So this model of the recombinant vaccine has a high potential and can be used in develop a recombinant vaccine, which we have different parameters. And this is again the same thing we have tested for equal injection. So it could be equal injection, how the virus goes down and how the immunity increases. So we know that IgM is for primary immunity that responds to the many antigens, and then followed by the IgG, so immunoglobulin and immunoglobulin, and then even G. So how this gets increases over dual injection, then how the virus goes down. So this is what we have done. So again, the cytokine change. Yeah, that's all. This is what I wanted to discuss. Hello.
Yeah. So, Dr. Mukesh, your work and your talk was very, very interesting, and I'm getting so many comments in the chat box as well as in the Telegram interactive chat box.
Just I want to tell you one thing.
Yes.
Outside is always storm started, and this is raining. I'm in my office, and I can see here thunder outside. So, anyways, I can have some couple of questions with you.
Okay. So, questions are Dr. Suresh. You can ask. Dr. Suresh.
So,
Yes, doctor. Yes, please.
my question is specifically related to the candidate vaccine you just spoke about. Which of the protein or peptides you have taken to derive these particular candidate vaccines? It's a nucleocapsid protein or viral? Which part of virus? I just want to ask, Doctor.
So basically, it's not about the proteins. We have screened the epitopes present on all 4 structural proteins. So we have taken into consideration the membrane, surface, the nucleocapsid, and all 4 proteins we have taken into consideration. So we have screened out the epitopes. So
Okay.
all epitopes for B cell, T cell, and IFN gamma present on the structural proteins. So we have screened out the epitopes present on all 4 structural.
And one more question: is there any lab in India who are very close to clinical trial for any vaccine?
It's very difficult. I really don't have any information, and I can't answer this. I don't know how many.
Because I'm asking this question because our principal scientific advisor has said that he is collaborating with the Serum Institute of India, who are collaborating with Oxford. So where are
Yeah.
these public sector institute of ours who are getting crores of funding for viral research basically doesn't come up with any of these candidate vaccine? You are doing very good job, I can say, because you are working in a public sector institute. But collaborating with private sector and then pumping public sector money into a private sector.
Yeah.
That's my question is, yeah.
I tell you, the vaccine work, the recombinant vaccine work, this we have compiled and submitted to the scientific report. I have already submitted revision last week. So
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is in review or in revision, you can say. So the work,
Yes.
the same work I have compiled and submitted to ICMR also. From my director's note, the same work we have submitted to the DB ICMR, that one should take a note on the this work how the recombinant vaccine can be a game changer. Uh,
That's what I.
to
Yeah.
my expertise, I had my master's PhD all in biotechnology, and I'm working in evolutionary aspects. And I mean, the protein modeling I have done for the first time, but yes, the evolutionary genetics I have been doing since so many years. Uh, uh, really, I mean, what your points you raise is very pertinent. Uh, and definitely, I mean, we are also very much look forward if some private company or the pharmaceuticals, any company can come forward to take part. And this is not an experimental design. This is most done has been the non in silico modeling on the computational approaches. However, we have considered all the fundamental questions and how we know the dynamics of the virus, transmission into the human cell. So all these epitopes, and we have done so many, characterizations. A very limited study I could present, but there's a lot more to discuss. Uh, I also look forward that somebody could take a note on this study. This is very much available on the biology. This is why I first thought to submit this study to get patenting, but then I submitted on Biorhythmics. It's a preprint journal and it's accessible to all. So anyone who's interested can download the study and can take use of the model of the recombinant vaccine. So here I would like to share with you. Last week, I mean 2 weeks ago, I got an email from US, somebody from the Alabama, and he was trying to develop a biosensor for the COVID. So he has asked and me to share the sequence of my recombinant vaccine construct. So he has gone through the entire paper, the strategy that we have followed, and he was very much convinced. And he thought that this recombinant vaccine, can be used to develop a biosensor. So he's trying to develop a biosensor using recombinant vaccine model that we are doing. Yeah.
So,
Thank you, Dr. Mukesh. All the best.
so Dr. Suresh is our associate professor in Department of Biotechnology, or we usually say in our university is like University School of Biotechnology, and he is working on animal cell line and then something related to animal biotechnology. There is one question from one of the participant, Dr. Kakuli Banerjee. She want to know about the correlation between the temperature and the mutations. Is there any correlation?
So there is no study directly on this, but I can say this is a very much known study, again published in a Nature journal, that talks about that virus accumulate one mutation in every 15 to 20 days. So just see, I mean, we also analyze in the third frame of analysis, we have considered 130 genomes, and where we found 71 mutations. So just imagine we have a very limited data to analyze. Still, we got 71 mutations. So we know the virus is highly pleomorphic and accumulate mutations very fastly. But there has been no study that talk about the temperature. I mean, there is no study that talk addresses temperature dependent. However, I can say the mutation happens during the course of any species who reproduce. There we have a meiosis, mitosis, and in case of the viruses, so they are RNA viruses, they also proliferate, and during the replication, they accumulate mutations. So some slippage happens during the replication, and then a mutation happens. And this mutation, if it is beneficial to the virus, it can fix to the population, or if it is a non-significant mutation, it will be purged out. So virus actually has no relation with the temperature. I mean temperature. Sorry, mutation has no relation with temperature. However, the mutation occurs during the course of replication. So it's a replication slippage when the mutation occurs in the genome.
Okay. So what I know from our interaction in WhatsApp and other groups, like Dr. Mukesh is working and getting all these data from NCBI, and all of these data is freely available in the NCBI, and I am surprised to know that from the freely available data one can reach up to that a great research and define a mutation, and then he is also involved in the designing of the vaccine genome and other thing. So congratulations, Dr. Mukesh. I am very much happy to see that on the free available data, one can do a very fantastic research. And thanks for agreeing in a very short notice. And I keep on placing you in between the speakers line. So thanks for being with me. And on the behalf of entire this faculty development program team, and I am placing a warm thanks to you.
Thank you so much.
So this is our end of the today's session, and tomorrow we all will meet at 2 o'clock, and I will have the link in email as well as also in the Telegram chat box. So all the participants now can leave. Thanks, Mukesh. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.